close and secure all possible entrances to your home. Switch off all lights. Do not look out of any windows. Do not respond to any knocks on your windows or doors until the all clear is given. Remain silent at all times.
It's like, this dude's too cool for long sentences.
He said the key words. He said,
streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts.
We call it a poop bag.
With Brad and Jay.
Yeah, it's got a new show.
It came to you, like, basically straight from my brain.
We're not going to have those devil books in here.
We are live.
All right, here we go. The moment everyone's been waiting for years and years. It's your favorite live, I don't know, minutes maybe. Your favorite live podcast is ready. My name is Jay. Thanks for joining us. That's Brad as always. But, you know, enough about us, because we are in the presence of literary royalty. Everyone in the chat, and I see they're all coming in right now. Let's give a warm welcome to the one and only Joe R. Lansdale.
What's going on, Joe?
This is where we should do like an applause
sound,
track, but
we can't afford that.
Not in the budget.
You
How you doing, Joe?
Neighbors come over and clap.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get all our kids to come in and clap in the background.
Right, all your kids, right? No, I'm doing good. I hope you guys are.
Doing good.
What would you normally be doing on a Friday night instead of talking to two bozos with microphones right now?
Well, probably by this time we often watch a movie or TV shows, and then I read before bed, and I read during the day, and I write in the early mornings, and I do martial arts, teach martial arts once a week still, and you know, a variety of different things, because I've got a lot more flexibility because of my job, and because 3 hours a day is my normal work time. There's a lot of room.
Do you normally try to write every day?
I do. Yes, I do try to write every day. It's rare that I miss a day. It usually has to do with something beyond my power. And when I was traveling, and of course with COVID, we haven't been doing much in the way of traveling, but when I was traveling, I took my laptop with me and carried it with me wherever I went, and I would grab a few minutes here and there. So I was constantly working. I've started taking a little more time off. And this year I may be taking a little more time off because I'm sort of recalibrating on a number of things that I'm working on and planning to do. But so far I haven't really done that.
Yeah.
I've got up every morning and worked, you know, so it's hard for me to break a habit of a lifetime of working daily. And I don't want to break it, but I thought you know, a little bit of a break wouldn't be a bad idea.
I think that's why a lot of people don't retire, because they're like, what am I going to do with my time once I retire?
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
something like writing, you keep everything moving. So,
right. I think the movie The Wild Bunch said something about retiring. He said, retired of what? You know?
Yeah.
And I sort of feel that way myself. I mean, I fortunately, you know, my family is great, whatever, but they're all working too. You know, it's a creative bunch, you know, for that matter. My wife is sort of retired. She handled my business and things like that for a long time. And, you know, she founded the Horror Writers Association and lots of other stuff that she's done. So we've all stayed busy the entire time. And I don't intend to cease working unless I just can't work. I mean, I always said I don't plan to retire, but life will retire me.
Yeah. So I think my father-in-law, he's retired like 3 times from 3 different jobs. He just keeps going back because he can't sit at home and sit still. He has to be a busybody doing something. So he just keeps doing
what's
stuff.
in that. Yeah.
So
I like
still
creating
going
too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm still
so that means we got a lot more books coming from you.
Yeah, it gives me reason to get up in the morning and have all those books coming, or short stories, or I even have a book of poetry, which I never planned to do. And there's my friend Mike Casto. Hi, Mike. But I never plan to retire if I can still keep doing. Martial arts, I probably will retire from in about 5 years because I want to focus on a lot of other things. And I started when I was 11, so if I retire then, I've certainly put in my miles on that.
Oh yeah,
I'll be 75 at that point. And who knows? You know, I never know. You know?
Just keep pushing it back a little bit and a little bit.
As long as I'm physically capable, and that's the cool thing I am. You know, I'm very fortunate in that respect.
What's
And
the age of the martial arts you teach? Are they just young kids or
mean the
adults?
students?
Yes.
I don't teach kids, but there are kids, that are taught there by some of the other students. I don't teach them. I teach adults only, and it's a self-defense class primarily, and but I think they do have a maybe twice a week children's class. I don't run that part of it anymore. I stepped out of that and just teach my classes, and the students took over that.
Yeah, like I was telling you before the show, my 6-year-old, he started 4 or 5, 6 months ago, and he's really enjoying it so far. He's got whatever the belt is above white belt, like white with the green little threads through it.
They vary in different systems, right? I think I
Yeah.
just saw Margaret was on here too, a friend of mine. So hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Margaret. She retired 2 weeks ago. Mike says that he wants her to edit him. Mike's Casto is also a writer, does some work besides teaching martial arts and different things, computer work and stuff. Yeah. So retirement's not big on my agenda.
I would say it's hard to retire being a creative. Like those stories don't just stop coming. Like you can't just shut that valve off, and like you have to still have that creative output to do something.
The interesting thing about that, having talked to a lot of older writers before I was an old writer, and most of them, when they tell me this, they're in their 80s, is that the creativity doesn't necessarily stop, but the willpower to get it done does. And it's harder to get it done. And some of the energy flags, I've always thought it's not so sad if you still have the ability to do it and you don't mind not doing it. It's only sad if you have the ability to do it, or you don't have the ability to do it and you still want to. That would be the tough part. I think Hammett talked about that, Dashiell Hammett.
Yeah, we talked to Ronald Kelly a few months back. He's got the same outlook on it. He said he's writing the most stuff right now. Like this year, he's going to have so many releases. You think he's like a brand new person, but he's got so many because he's got so many ideas just wanting to get out there. So, and he's in his 60s right now too. So, there's no sign of retirement. So,
my most prolific time in my life was in my 60s.
Yeah,
I turned out more material and screenplays and comic books and novels and short stories and nonfiction and poetry and I can't even believe all the stuff that I've written. But especially in the time I turned 60, I didn't slow down. I sped up, and it surprised me. And I first started feeling, I never felt old at all until I hit 65, and then it's sort of like I felt, wait a minute, what is this? What is this? This doesn't seem right. And so, but I still turned out a lot, and I still do. Being able to do that is both a blessing and a curse, and thank you, LJ. But it's both a blessing and a curse because, if you like to write like I do, you write a lot. And that works well for you because you got a lot of stuff out there and a lot of readers. But if you're like me and you like to write in a lot of different genres and different areas, it can hurt you, to some degree. But I don't care. That's what I do, and it's how I stay interested. I've written everything from horror to crime to mystery to suspense to science fiction to, you name it, historical.
Got some westerns in there too, don't you?
Right.
Yeah, westerns. I've even done a couple of like romantic short stories, and I've written for literary magazines. I've written for pulp style magazines. I love it all, and I'm influenced by so much of it. And when I say I love it all, I don't mean I like everything, but I love all kinds of genres, and I've really felt good about that. And I've got to work in film and TV and animation for Batman the Animated Series. So I have had one hell of a life and a good career, so I'm not complaining.
So you probably don't have like a favorite genre then. You just, as long as you're doing
not really
whatever you like.
I think I feel when I'm writing one, I think about the other. When I'm working on one, I also be thinking about the other. But
like your brain's so far ahead of itself. So it's just
right. I don't think I could pick one actually, but I really love things about the Old West. That's a big love of mine. But I still, even then, I wouldn't want to write historicals or westerns all the time either.
Right.
Yeah. Because you get burnt out on doing the same thing. Like you can have different stories.
You do.
The same genre, you get that burnout.
Right. What's weird about horror is, I guess the drive-in's kind of a horror novel. and
Mhm.
maybe Night Runners could be, and Dead in the West. But really, those are about the only horror novels I've written. Most of what my recognition as a horror writer comes from short stories, and I've written a lot of those.
Yeah.
But I carried over the tools from horror into some of the crime fiction, even if it's
Mhm.
not supernatural,
Right.
which, I like supernatural. For me, supernatural's fun, but the other stuff is, to me, I think more appealing is a sort of realistic horror, like
Yeah.
In Cold Blood by Truman Capote and things like that.
Mhm.
But when I really look at it, I haven't written that much in lengthy horror, and part of that is because I think horror works best in short stories. It doesn't mean exclusively, but
Uh-huh.
mostly, I'd rather read a short story. Most novels wear out with me maybe halfway. If I get that far on them, then I don't care. But short
Yeah.
stories, they can come in and do it. But a good horror novel is different. But I find that crime and suspense lends itself quite well to novels. The same way with historicals and westerns, and so for me, I think that's how I feel about it. Others may have a totally different, conclusion for that. But like
Yeah.
Ron, I'm a pro. I've been around a long time. I write for the love of it, and I've learned to write for myself, and I've learned to write like everybody I know is dead, which is a quote I use all the time because I'm not trying to figure out what anybody else wants. I'm
Yeah.
writing for me, not for my relatives or friends or agents or whatever. And if I get a contract and it says I've got 2 suspense novels, 2 crime novels, I know that they're going to have those elements, but I don't try to figure out what everybody wants to make those elements satisfying to them. I'm trying to satisfy me.
Yeah. I feel
Right.
like if you're trying to write for other people, then you're never going to be satisfied with it yourself, I
You're
think.
never going to be. You can't please everybody. Just, be
Yeah.
logical. You can't be universally admired. You just have to write your own stuff.
And I'm glad you said that. Like a horror novel, like you fall out of it halfway. That's why I kind of like the horror novellas, because it's almost like the perfect length.
Yeah.
And
Novellas are pretty perfect for most everything.
right.
Yeah. We
I've
Jay
written
compares them a
quite a
lot
few.
to
Yeah.
horror novellas being like a 90-minute horror movie, which is about on par for what you want for a horror movie most of the time.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think my favorite for short stories is it tends to be short, but novella length works pretty well. I think when you get past that, there are exceptions. There's some of my favorite horror reading has been novels, and some
Right.
of them have been big, thick ones. So I'm not saying that as an absolute or exclusively, but I'm saying more often than not, I find that's what happens. And when I find one that I, can't put down, that's wonderful. But I
Yeah.
think the other thing too about being a writer for so long and being a reader for so long, because I read a lot still, but having done that, it's harder to satisfy you because you
Uh-huh.
pick up something you've already read it. And,
Oh yeah.
it's just a version of that. And what really changed for me more than anything else is the prose. I want to read somebody that writes well, that has a voice, that has an attitude, that has an ability to handle dialogue and characterization and just the sound of the words and atmosphere. And if it doesn't
Mhm.
have that, the story itself no longer pulls me. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's an exception here and there, but mostly I don't care what happens next because I can't chew on it any,
Yeah. I've sort of gotten burnt out with haunted house stories. Like the ones I've read recently, they all sort of feel the same, and none of them really jump
Yeah.
out. Like have great characters, and that can be with anything.
Yeah.
Slashers or
Right.
monster of the week or
Right.
whatever.
It's so weird because what I was first known for was kind of Southern Gothic stuff. And I did
Mhm.
that so much that it began to, just pain me and wear me out. So I kind of went into writing more supernatural. I've written some haunted house stuff, not much, but I've written some. But I love to read a good one. And I find that if you want to read a good haunted house story, you have to read the Victorian stuff.
Yeah.
Those were the best haunted house stories. And there are exceptions, of course, but I just take a break and go back and read the old classic horror stories. And it's odd because in the 80s, me and several others, we broke a lot of rules and we did a lot of things different. But also, I think you've got to go back and look at the classics. I get so sick of lists of the classic novels, and there's nothing older than 4 years old. Those they're not all classics in 4 years old, or it's when
Right.
it just came out last week. Doesn't mean you can't list it as a good novel or feel it's a future classic. But,
Yeah.
when you got really old books that are classics or that have influenced the genre, even if they don't hold up in other ways, it's people don't know about them anymore, and it saddens me. And they don't read outside their genres. They get and it's one reason people burn out on genres. It's one reason that the writing burns out, because they don't experience anything new. They don't get outside of that. It's always the same stuff. And I'll feel it myself, because I've written 5 or 6 stories maybe in a row, and I start to feel like I'm on a theme, which isn't bad unto itself, but I realize I need to change that. I need to get out and rethink and kind of recalibrate and try to find another way of telling stories, so that I don't just wear me out. That's the thing. If I wear me out, then and then the other thing too is, when you've been doing it as long as I have, I can mechanically write a story without any effort, and it'll be a good story and it'll hold up, but it's not the same. It's lacking something. And so sometimes you have to be able to build a chair, as they used to say, and then other times you're trying to build a cathedral, even if it's in a short story. So it takes a different mindset, and you should be able to do both, but you don't want to get latched into just building chairs.
Yeah, there's sort of that just doing the bare bones and then actually putting the passion behind it, sort of the difference between the two.
Right.
I did read
I don't plot. Go ahead.
You pants everything.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I did read a really good haunted house story at the beginning of the year. Inheriting Her Ghost by S.H. Cooper was really fantastic, and that one stood out above.
Okay.
And like I said, not that I'm against haunted house stories, they just, and with anything, like
I know exactly what you mean. I love them all. Some of my favorite books are haunted house books, and some of my favorite short stories are. But I go through periods where I get washed out on the Victorian stuff. One day I'll get up and I'll think that's it, I'm out, and then I'll come back to it. Maybe 6 months, maybe 4 or 5 years later. But yeah, I guess I never liked that term pantser. I don't know. I know what it means, but I've always felt that I plot subconsciously. I've taught my subconscious to work a long time ago to keep me from feeling stressed every day, thinking about stories where I couldn't go on with my life and be proper with my family and be able to do other things. And so I've taught myself subconsciously to think about stories. That doesn't mean that it doesn't occasionally bubble up and, is in the open for me to go, oh yeah, look at that. That's a great idea. But generally I go to bed at night and the well fills up, and then I get up in the morning and I write. The exceptions to that are when I collaborate with somebody. You almost have to have at least some general approach, or you're riding off in 2 directions. That's why I don't collaborate much. I do some. I've done it with my kids now. And then screenplays are different, because that's a community experience anyway. So when you're doing that, that you have limitations. That you have limitations of the kind of film that they're looking for, what the director wants, what the producer wants, what some money provides. And then when they start shooting it, the weather can change things. I mean, there's so many factors. You have to look at that as a group endeavor. There are very few auteurs really. And even if you write the script and direct it and produce it, the actors are going to interpret it their way. Even when you're trying to get them to interpret a certain way, they're still going to interpret it their way. The sets are going to look like what the sets look like. There will be what you can find that's serviceable within the budget that you have. So you're working in a different mindset there. And anytime you're collaborating or working with more than one person, that changes the other. And I like doing all of it to some extent, but there's nothing more satisfying to me than getting up and just saying, I wonder where this is going to go today.
Yeah. That always blows my mind as a non-writer. I write reviews, but I don't write stories. That an author can be writing a story and they don't even know where it's going to go. Like Brian Boyer, one of a friend of ours, an author, he surprises himself writing stories all the time. And to me, that's just mind-boggling. Like, how can you surprise yourself when you're supposed to be the one in control, knowing everything that's happening? That's crazy.
Well, your subconscious probably does know some of that. It just hasn't revealed it to you yet. It's like I say, when I go to sleep at night, the well fills up. And when I get up in the morning, I'm ready to go. And sometimes I don't even feel like I'm ready to go until I sit down, and then it's just like it just pours out. So it's why I don't procrastinate. I've learned there's no satisfaction in procrastination. The satisfaction is from doing it. And when you do it, you feel great.
So with you saying all of that, you're ready to go in the mornings. Do you feel like with being in the business so long that everything you write has to be a hit, or does that even matter anymore?
I definitely don't do that.
Okay.
I know. I never try to top myself in the one before. I never try to think, is this the big one? Because sometimes I don't want to write the big one. I want to write what I want to write. And I go through moods where I want to write something light, something fun. I want to write something for a small press it doesn't mean it's lesser because it's a small press, but I know that, even though I'm writing for me, I know that I'm going to have a better, I guess, a better job by doing it that way, because that's what they specialize in. Because I have this character called Ned the Seal, and that's not going to be, big time. I could maybe sell it to them, but they wouldn't know what to do with it. And I don't know what to do with it. So I write it, and I'll have small presses that have the ability to know how to market that and get people who want to read it and give an opportunity for something that's unusual or something that I don't write regularly, because I don't really write anything regularly. So, but there are some things, even though you just feel driven to write them, when you get through, you go, well, I didn't write this for anybody but me. But now that I'm done, I'm going to market it and hope it sells well, hope it finds its audience. That's when you want to do it.
So what is Ned the Seal? Is that from a story?
Oh, there's 3 novels about Ned the Seal. Those were done for Subterranean Press, and they're about a seal who has had his brain enhanced on the island of Dr. Momo. And but they're entirely farce. They're fun. They're satire. They're farce. They're like the cartoons between the features.
Oh yeah, and that's like the opposite end of the spectrum from what you'd get with the Hap and Leonard novel.
Or from the drive-in is somewhere else too. There's a novel, the drive-in series. That's a totally different thing. And the Magic Wagon, the Thicket, and all those are different. And then the Hap and Leonard and other kinds of suspense things like the Bottoms, Edge of Dark Water. None of those are actually. There's like groupings. I can find groupings, but I can't find a group.
You were talking about earlier that you like to write in all different genres. Have you ever had like a publisher or anybody tell you that that's a bad idea? Like you should focus in one and not spread yourself so thin like that?
Yeah, I've been told that.
Have you? And
so is that the worst advice you've ever heard?
It was for me. There are certain writers that I respect, but their books are designed to be the same book every time or some slight difference. And when you write a series, that happens. Hap and Leonard, there's going to be certain things that are going to reoccur because it's them. And they're going to have, and that's fine. That's the comfortable house shoes element of them. But even then, I try to adventure out and do different things with them, and I don't write them and nothing else. I write a lot of other things. I recently did MOONLAKE. Before that, I did More Better Deals. Neither of which are like those at all. They're crime, but they're very different. MOONLAKE's really a Southern Gothic tall tale combined with crime story. And I got one called Donut Legion coming out next year. That's about a cult that worships flying saucers, and they finance their cult with donut shops. And they've got some bad ideas that are criminal. So that's that's a different thing. That's somewhere in between being a serious novel and a fun novel. And I hope they're all fun. I never write anything for it to be dull. I mean, I enjoy reading Kafka. People talk, I just want to be entertained. Well, so do I. What kind of comment is that? You think I just want to be dull and nothing's fun? I'm just entertained by what entertains me, and you're entertained by what entertains you. And it doesn't mean it's the same thing.
Yeah, no writer sets out to make a boring novel. At least they shouldn't.
No, I'm a good writer. I mean, I'm sure there's some really pretentious writers or something that feel that, but I don't think of myself as a hack or just an entertainer, but I don't think of myself as a purely social or political or, I guess, writer of importance. You hope you have importance in what you do, but I don't think it's, again, you got to write like everybody is dead. You can't let those things creep into how you think about writing. The story has to reveal that to you. And my subconscious is constantly, it's like a magpie. It flies around and picks a little here, picks a little there, puts it all in the nest. And it tells me what it's about as I sit down to write.
When you're writing a book, when do you know it's going to become a series? Like, do you get halfway through and think you should go farther, or you don't?
Hap and Leonard's my most famous series, and I thought it was a standalone. I wrote a Savage Season book, and it wasn't until 3, maybe 4 years, I don't remember exactly, before the second one appeared. And I had no intention of writing another one. It's just the one I was writing on wasn't working well, and I put it aside. And then I just sat down and wrote Mucho Mojo in 4 months. And when I turned it in, they went nuts for it, and I realized, my God, I've got a series.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, and the Drive-In, I wrote 3 of those, but I never thought of them as being a series, but they are. Same with Ned the Seal. I didn't know they're going to be a series. You know. And short stories, I have one
around today still. So
yeah, I got the horror things about the Reverend Mercer. It was supposed to be one book, Dead in the West, one of the few horror novels that I wrote. And I started writing novellas and short stories about the character. And before I know it, I knew it. I had a series, and my daughter and I have a series that started out as me doing a 1-shot for myself, and then a 2-shot. And then she and I wrote one together, and then we borrowed characters from the story we wrote together and my series, and we put them together. And then that rest of the series were written by both of us, but there was no plan to do that.
So I wanted to ask, as a parent, as a father, and me and Jay are both parents too, what was it like to have your kids sort of not follow in your footsteps on it? I don't want to say that because they're doing their own thing, but sort of take up the love of the genre and in writing and being a creator like you are. Was that just like a cool moment for you to have your kids do that?
I always thought they would be creative. I just didn't expect them to do writing, and I never pushed them to do writing. And I always just told them, find out what you want to do and make yourself happy. Because I only ask one thing from both of you, and that's your character. I want your character to be good. Everything else is up to you, falls into place or it doesn't, but your character matters, because most of the things that do fall into place, character has something to do with that. And my daughter is a professional singer and songwriter, and she was, in love with that, what she always wanted to do. And she did it for years. She's John Carter Cash, Johnny Cash's son, was her producer. She's got albums. She's done really well. And then when COVID hit, she was already doing like commercials and as an actress in commercials and some little small film parts and things like that. She was in Westworld. She was the body double for the main lady. I forget. Rachel
for Dolores.
Yeah,
I think it's Dolores.
And so,
the main character.
I mean, her real name, the actress, I think, was Evan Rachel Wood. But I never watched the series, so I don't know. But nonetheless, she was always doing things like that. But when COVID hit, a lot of that went out the window. So now she's public relations for Tachyon Books, and she started a publishing company. And so, I'm proud of her for that. My son is a stock, I guess what you would call, what is that? I guess he's a stockbroker. I think that's fair. He's a stockbroker, and he also writes screenplays. He's had 2 movies made. He's written numerous comics. We co-wrote a novel. He's got a short story coming out. He's writing all the time. He does broker stuff, and then he writes. So sometimes he'll get up in the morning and write. Then he goes do the stockbroker stuff, because his office is in his home right now. So. I'm proud of them because they found that way. My son started out in journalism. He worked in journalism for 4 years, and then he worked in writing PR stuff for a tourist railroad in East Texas. It was an old train that you could ride, and like in the old days. And he worked on that, and then he invented his own newspaper. In other words, they've constantly been creative, because I think that's just part of them. And my wife has just managed all that just beautifully for us until they went on their own completely. And she's always handled my stuff until just recently. I now have accountants, and Casey has started handling some of that and giving poor Karen a rest, but she was always the brain behind the operation.
So do you find it tougher to work with them, since you're kids? Like you put your foot down and say, this is what we're going to do now?
No, not really. I find it tougher to work with anybody. I don't like doing collaborations, but I actually work with the kids real well, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Keith and I have tremendous similarities, and we have tremendous differences. Casey and I have tremendous similarities, and we have tremendous differences. But where the similarities is how we're able to hook into the stories, and then we bring new things. But I relearn a lot of stuff. Hi, Chad. But I relearn a lot of stuff by working with them. And when I work in screenplays, which I find a lot easier than fiction, but I still learn new stuff, and I learn better ways to handle my own novels and short stories from those experiences. But if I collaborated all the time, I wouldn't be worth a damn. Most of the time when you collaborate, you don't get something as good as either one of you could have done by yourself most of the time. And
I feel like it's good to work. I feel like it's good to work with somebody that has those differences than you, because that just
if you're
adds
going to
something
do
to
it,
the pot. If you're all the same, then you may as well not work with anybody different.
I agree, and I guess and I used to work with Lou Shiner when we first started our career back in the 70s, when we were trying to write specifically for play. What do they want? How do you do it? And that's how I learned that wasn't me. And that's how Lou learned that wasn't him either. We do our own thing, but we worked together and we fought it every inch of the way, but we came up with some good stories. But I would do stuff like start writing and I would send it to him. I say, can you go with that? And he goes, no, I can't go with that. What happens next? So that's when I learned that not everybody did like I did. And I also learned that even if they did, they're going to ride their horse in a different direction. And that's when I learned that in collaborations, I had to, work in concert with somebody. And that's when I learned I didn't want to do it.
I think sometimes from the reader standpoint, when they're reading something from a collaboration, they can sometimes pick out who did what, because if the styles are clashing too much and they don't really gel as much as you may think they should, it kind of removes the reader from it sometimes too. Because I've read some collaborations where I'm like, it's a different voice. When it happens, you're like, then you're kind of out of it. You want to know what one person really thinks, and the other person what they think about it too. So, collaboration
sometimes
scary.
Sometimes though, I've had people tell me I could tell where you were and where so and so was, and they're wrong. It was the other way around, and that's probably because some instinct allows them to think somewhat like you, and their prose to push somewhat like yours, and you do the same in reverse. There have also been times when I've written something and Casey or Keith have made that same thing better with revisions, and I've done vice versa with them. And so it's when a collaboration is really good, you can look at it and you can't really remember who did what, because it begins to blend and become that one voice. And that's what you're looking for, is to create a voice that may have similarities but should be different. What Casey and I have the same sense of humor and the same flow of style. Keith and I have the same sense of humor in another area, another arena, and our styles work a little less in concert, but after we get it going, then it's fine.
So you talked about Casey starting her own press. Is that Pandy Press? Yes,
Pandy Press. They're just now really diving into it in the last few weeks, past 2 or 3 weeks. It's been around a while, but it was mostly there kind of to put 2 or 3 of my books in print that had been lost because the publishers went out of business or something. And frankly, I'd gotten to that point where I'd sold a bunch of my backlist, and then I get the ebooks, and I realize that now they're in print forever as long as they can do one ebook. And that's not good. And they don't have limitations. But some of the smaller presses and things, you have 4 or 5 years, you get your rights back to the property, and you can stay with them or you can move somewhere else, and that's the way it ought to be honest. It's the way it ought to be with the big ones. But publishing's just gotten so complex. It's not about how good a book is. It's how well they think they can sell that book. And I understand that, because if you can't sell them, it's not good. But on the other hand, if all you can do is sell them, it means a lot of crap can get out there too, because unless a reader is exposed to other things, they expect certain things. And so sometimes when you get out there and you find something different, that's what happened to me. As I got older, I just read more broadly. I realized, I can do better than what I've done here in the 70s. I started selling in the 70s. I said, I can beat this. I can do better than this. Or this story that I like is a good story, but man, it's crap as far as writing goes. And then I would look at the literary stuff, and I would say, now I know why Hemingway is Hemingway. I know why Fitzgerald is Fitzgerald, and Steinbeck is Steinbeck, and Flannery O'Connor is Flannery O'Connor, because they can write, and they write scenes, and they write beautiful prose. They write interesting dialogue. But you can borrow that and bring those elements into horror. And that's not to say that all horror writers or science fiction writers were crap. They weren't. There were some tremendously good ones, but there's no doubt in those genres, you didn't have to be as good prose wise.
Yeah.
So you can look back on some of your earlier stuff now and realize that you're much stronger now. That it's one of those situations where if only you knew what you know now.
I'm a better writer now than I've ever been. Yeah, absolutely. But you wouldn't know what you know now without that. And
exactly,
that's how you learn. I mean, some of this stuff is just awful, but it's you're learning as you go, and you can never be too damn proud, because it'll get knocked out from under you if you do. I mean, I'm proud of what I do, but I'm not prideful. There's a difference. There's nothing I've written that I'm ashamed of writing, but there's certainly some things better than others. And as I've gotten older, I think I handle prose better than ever. I think my imagination is better than ever. And it's a matter of whether your energy flags. And that's what happens when you get older. Like a lot of writers, the older writers I mentioned that I've spoken to in their 80s especially, it's just that their energy flags, and their desire flags. And when your energy flags, your willpower flags. So that's what it can do to you. So always write like this is your last day. And you've got plenty of stuff to be proud of. It's not just about getting it done. It's about getting it done as right as you possibly can. And also understanding that you'll never get it absolutely right. There's a lot of dead perfectionists without anything ever been published.
That's sort of Ronald Kelly, I think he tweeted it today or yesterday. Someone was saying he's putting out too many stories now, this year. He was like, well, I'm getting older. I can't sit around and hold these stories in. There's might not be that much time left. So I have to get him out when I can, because he got like, I don't know, 6 books he's putting out this year or something crazy.
All that kind of stuff is idiotic anyway. That, I have a writer that he just can't stand the fact that there's some people who can write fast and well. So I only write a few, and he's he does a good job. It's not that, but writing slow doesn't make you better necessarily. You may be just a good writer and write slow. And there are a lot of bad writers who write fast, but there are a lot of good writers who write fast. There are probably more bad writers that write fast because they got more crap out there for you to see. But the truth is, it has nothing to do with fast or slow unless it's sloppy fast, but you can be sloppy slow. Just because it takes you forever to get something done doesn't mean you're really, putting it to it. And I don't do multiple drafts. I get diminishing returns. I do one draft and a polish. But if you looked at what I did every day, if we still had, paper coming out of the typewriter and I was throwing it away, I'd have a trash can this high every day for my 3 hours, for just 3 hours, because I revise that much as I go along. But when I get done, that's anywhere at its worst is 90%, but usually it's more like 95 to 98%. And then I just go back and reread it, make corrections. Sometimes I'll go, I could add a line back over here that will support this scene better. And, now and again, you'll have something where maybe you do have 10 or 15 pages that aren't worth a damn, and you'll go in and revise them, or you feel you could do it better. But for me, multiple drafts just bores me and makes me want to quit. And I learned a long time ago, I was just getting too down about the work, not wanting to do it. Oh, I've got my vomit draft, and then I've got the other draft. And I would look at wait a minute, this looks pretty good here. And I just thought, yeah, the hell with that, and I write better this way than I did then. My prose is cleaner, and I think it has more depth. And I just, because I am revising, but I'm doing it as I go. I'm not doing a bunch of multiple drafts.
I would think a lot of multiple drafts. I mean, the more you tweak it, the more you get away from the original ideal sometimes, and it's just like, you go back to the original, you stay with what you went with originally. It's more natural. It's got a better flow to it. So I can
think
see
so
doing
too.
multiple drafts is crazy.
Yeah. There are exceptions. I have friends who do multiple drafts. It works fine for them. That's what they like to do. And I have nothing against that. But what I am against is when somebody tells me that because I do it this way, that's the right way, or that. And I don't do that, because I have a feeling there's some people do multiple drafts and need to work 12 hours a day. And, but I'm very disciplined. When I get up, I go to work. I'm not kidding around. And when I get done with that 3 hours later, and sometimes it's less than that. Sometimes I'll sit down and 10 pages will flow out, and then I'll go back and revise that 10. If for some reason I get 20 pages, I may not do as much revision that day, but the next morning before I start, I reread it. And then I'm back on track.
I feel like there's that danger where people can be too meticulous with their work and try to, like you said, make it too perfect, and then they're just never going to be happy with that final product. And like
you want it perfect, but you have to realize that doesn't happen. There's no such things as perfection, because you look at something you wrote here, then 10 years later, you'd probably do it different. And I've told my kids and my daughter especially that as a writer, what I noticed and what a lot of writers I know noticed when they were starting is every 6 months they would look back and go, oh my God, I'm so much better than that now. Because you would jump quicker when you're, when you're starting out. Now those paces are farther apart and they're not as noticeable, but I can look at more recent prose and go, that's much better prose. Is it a better story? That depends on the reader. But I think that line per line, I'm a far better writer than I ever was.
You feel like your craft is better than it used to be?
Much better. Philip Jose Farmer, famous science fiction writer in my day when I was younger. He's not as well known now as he once was. But, he told me something I've never forgotten, and I adhere to it because I admired him so much. And he was a hit or miss writer. He had a lot of stuff that was not good, but when he was on, he was a genius, a true genius. Not everybody slings that word around now, I've heard people, oh, Lansdale, you're a genius. I said, yeah, Einstein and me. I don't think so. But what I am, I'm good at what I do and I work hard. But Phil was a genius, and he just was inconsistent. And a lot of it was he's having to make a living being a science fiction writer when science fiction paid mostly in a fart and a promise. And so he told me once, he said, if you want to be good, you got to crawl out on a limb and saw it off with you sitting on the wrong end. And I thought, that's right. You've got to take chances. Or otherwise, if you're trying to be safe all the time, and there's nothing wrong with having a safe story or a safe novel now and then. I've done it because that's what I wanted to write. That's what I felt. Right. But I have to take chances. I have to reach out and do certain things. After a certain period, I seem like I mine a sort of concept I have, not an idea, but a concept. And I'll write enough novels within that concepts and within those principles, within that philosophical aspect of the story. And then I want to move on to something else. And it may be a year, maybe 2 years, it may just be a few months or a few weeks. And it's one of the wonders and beauties of short stories is you can do that much more quickly and sooner. Yeah. You can write this one and write that one. Has no relationship one to the other.
Well, what's staying with that a little bit, do you think writers of today are just maybe scared or intimidated to offend people, so that's why they're afraid to take those chances?
Yeah,
have you ever come across that yourself? I mean,
I think so. I think that people say, what are your politics? My politics tend to be liberal socially and moderate fiscally. That's where I am. But if you really can't tell by that unless it's individual things that you discuss. Right. But my bottom line is, no matter what, when I write about racism, I want to make an impact about racism, then I write raw, because that's what I hear. And I'm not writing raw so I can say foul words or upset people or whatever. I want to upset them in a different way than what they're talking about. I'm trying to upset them and saying, look, this stuff goes on. And just because you can be politically correct doesn't change this. And I'm not trying to always just write a entertaining story. I want it to be entertaining, but I want it to say something. I want it to have some impact. And that, again, that's not all stories, but it's a certain level of my work and a certain kinds of things. And I think if you aren't willing to offend people, then you ought not be a writer. It's not about pretty manners. That's not what it is. Right. And that doesn't give you the license. It gives you the license, but it doesn't give me a reason to be politically incorrect just to be so.
Right. I want to offend them in a proper way.
And I don't, you got people now that divide every word and, this is what we think. Well, I don't give a fuck what you think about it. Pardon my phrase. But
no, you're good.
What I do think is that you have to have some personal power and instinct and ability to write what you want and a reason to offend.
Right.
And not just offensive for the sake of being offensive.
Right.
There's a difference.
Offend people the right way.
Yeah.
Offend people the right way. Offend people in the way that you want them to think about something. And some people never can. If you say shit, they can't think anything other than they've got a mouthful of it. and you can't do anything about people like that. And it's the way it ought to be, really. I mean, if I see a review, I think if you believe good reviews, you got to believe the bad ones. So people that get all worked up about reviews are wasting their energy. But I do see one that says, "Oh, yeah, I don't like this." No, well, I'll tell you in a minute. But I don't like this because it's got foul language in that. And I go, "Oh, mission accomplished," because that's not what my job is, and if all you want to do is sit down and have the lightest sort of entertainment all the time, that's fine. That's your choice. And there are things out there that will suit you, but that's not it, But what were you saying? I'm sorry.
I was saying, so you really don't care about the bad reviews, the good reviews. They're all just there for you.
Let me put it like this. Let me put it like, well, yeah. I mean, look at it this way. If you believe the good ones, you got to believe the bad ones. The only exceptions I make sometimes is I don't like a good one if I can tell that they've read the book very poorly. But, a good review is like a tool. And that's the way you've got to look at it. It's fun to believe it for a few minutes, but it's a tool that helps you promote your book. And a bad review doesn't really hurt you much. The only way bad reviews would bother me if that's all I got. If I got nothing but bad reviews or mostly bad reviews, then I might consider that I'm doing something wrong. But yet I might feel strongly enough to say, you know what? I'm going to stick with it. Because when I first started writing a lot of my stuff, editors didn't know what the hell to think about it. They didn't know. They go, "Oh my God, Night They Missed the Horror Show," or something like that. They read that and think, "I don't want to read anything else by this guy." But they were missing the story. And the people who got it totally got it. And most people got it. Most people understood. And I don't want to write stories and then have to give you the cliff notes that go with them.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
You have to be able to make up your own mind. And sometimes people are going to misunderstand them, but that's not nothing you can do about that. And it's the same thing with review. If a review is honest and they hate your work, it's honest. I had one the other day, and I had fans that were far upset about it. I had more fans upset about it. And I said, "Oh no, it was an honest review. I mean, and it's not a matter whether I agree with it or disagree with it." And in fact, I actually thought they made some good points. Is that it's not the way you should look at it as a personal insult to you. Now, I mean, we all want good reviews to help promote our books, but you can get so fanatic about that stuff that you begin to believe that they are you. They're not you. Right. It's a review. If the guy personally comes, "Oh, that Lansdale, what an asshole," I think then that's personal. That's a different thing. It's got nothing to do with the review. That's a totally different thing. But most of what you get is just everybody's right from their own perspective. You know what I mean? If you don't like something, you don't like something, and you're right from your own perspective.
It's your opinion.
When you think your perspective is so perfect, it's overwhelming that nobody else can have another. That's when you're flawed.
Yeah. You mentioned that review made some good points. Have you ever had a bad review that gave you constructive criticism that you've ever incorporated going forward at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had good reviews that told me nothing. And then I've had good reviews that told me things about myself that I was doing that I hadn't really noticed. And they were saying this works. And I would see it was consistent in several reviews. I go, okay, well, that's maybe something I ought to pay more attention to. But the problem with that, and I had a good friend that I thought did this, I won't say who, is in his reviews, they would talk about his humor all the time, which was magnificent. And so the books begin to be just jokes. So he misread that whole thing about humor. It has to be, it worked beautifully the way he did it. And, we all make mistakes. I mean, I've done things where I felt like, okay, I carried that too far. I didn't carry that far enough, but I don't brood, I'm moving on, which is another good thing about writing a lot of books.
You said that sometimes good reviews don't help. Like if a review says this is perfect, that doesn't tell me anything. Same as a review says this book's trash. That doesn't tell me anything. Like explain why you think it's perfect or why you think it's trash.
It's really not about whether it tells you anything or not. I don't think a review should be there to tell you anything necessarily. It's just that sometimes they do. It's just sometimes the information on what they liked will tell you something in the same way the information on what somebody didn't like. But I think a review really is about, there's a difference in a critic and a reviewer. A reviewer is there to tell you what they like or didn't like. And if you read that same reviewer enough, then you begin to understand how they think. I remember I had one reviewer that often disliked my work, but he liked other people's work that I agreed with him. So I thought, okay, well, they're all honest reviews, and I'll pay attention when he reviews this person. But the problem now is your reviews are spread out. Everybody's got a blog's got a review. Everybody that's can type has got a review. So they don't mean like what they used to. And they just don't have that same impact. And the special places like Publishers Weekly and things like that, they don't have the impact either because they're diluted by all these other reviews. It's so it's a different world for one thing. And the reviews are important, but they're not the totality of it. My agent once said if he could trade all of my reviews for money, I'd be the richest writer in the world because I had the best reviews of any writer he ever had. And overall, that's true. I have tremendous reviews. I've had some bad ones. I've had some bad ones, all the time here and there, but I've had more good ones. But those good reviews translated into sales. But there were people he had that got awful reviews that sold a lot more books.
Yeah, so bad reviews can sell books.
You don't want to blow that out of proportion even to begin with,
Yeah.
Well,
bad reviews can sell also.
It's just people don't care. And what most people don't understand is most people don't read reviews. People don't read reviews. We all read them because we're all part of a community.
Right.
But most people don't read reviews. Why'd you buy that book? Oh, it was on the bestseller list. So that means it's the best. Well, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
It means it's on the bestseller
according
list.
to who?
If you get on it once, you're more likely to get on it twice. Yeah. So all of that, you have to put it in perspective. I'd love to have a bestseller because then I would have another one. And then you know what? I would have more money and I would put that in my big bank account. And I would have this monstrous bank account with all these great bestsellers. But the other side of it is, I sell well, and how much money do you need? When you get older, you sometimes need a little more because you got to worry about health and things like that. But in some ways, I'm better off now than I've ever been. I'd rather not be getting older. And I don't mean that I'm waiting for a stall so the engine stalls out, but I'm just saying I'd rather be where if I could stay 45, I'd love that.
So let's talk about Hap and Leonard, because your new book's coming out, Born for Trouble.
Right.
Your Savage Season was the first one. There it is. Did you write anything about Hap and Leonard before Savage Season, or was that their first appearance?
No, that was the first one. I didn't know there was a Leonard. They were just a Hap novel. When I started it, Leonard showed up, and I thought, I don't know who this guy is, but I kind of like him. And he showed up again the next morning, and then I found out he was gay, and Hap already knew that, and so that was an interesting dynamic, and that he was conservative, and that Hap was liberal, and they were East Texans, and that they were both tough guys, and both had some martial arts training, and they were really good friends, and they were going to become even better friends, and they were both kind of impulsive. They weren't stupid by any means, but they were sort of person that didn't always learn from bad mistakes. If you do something and you repeat it, you generally get the same results. But they weren't sure of that, so they tended to repeat things for a while. And as the series goes on, then they begin to learn more. But they're Hap's idealistic, and Leonard's very realistic and pragmatic. But as the years have gone on, they've kind of mixed in they've taught each other things, both good and bad.
Well, with them being so different with each other, I mean, that's what keeps it interesting. It keeps the relationship a little spicy at times. So that's what, people are looking for, I think. So,
right. I hope so. And, I've added other characters that are more important, but I had no idea it was going to be a series, and it was the first I'd written about him. And I thought I was just going to write this book about Hap and him being coerced by his wife. And I didn't know he had a buddy, but I thought, I'm going to need somebody to take care of his house and his dogs. That'd be kind of a nice thing and then that was not what happened at all. They both were friends. They had somebody else to take care of the house and the dogs,
So it's interesting that you didn't originally start out to have Leonard be a black gay character. That's just something that sort of
I just
naturally
started to be a character
the story.
at all. He just showed up. Yeah. And once he showed up, he was his own man, and he wasn't a sidekick. As time went on, you realize this isn't like Lone Ranger and Tonto. It's like Lone Ranger and Lone Ranger, or Tonto and Tonto.
Yeah. Was that sort of, shocking is not the right word, but back when that came out, was it 90? It came out to have a black gay character. Was that sort of a big deal?
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't that it wasn't the first gay character in fiction. Joseph Hansen had Bandsetter, who was a gay detective, and he handled it in a very realistic straightforward, very honorable kind of way. They were good novels. I read a couple of those, but it was for some reason there were a lot of people that were like astonished at that. But one of the things that I've had happen, and numerous times, is someone come up to me and said, after reading your books, I have a totally different idea about gay people. I always thought they weren't looking at them as people.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking at them as something else. And I had one person tell me that the books of mine, I think he was referring primarily to Hap and Leonard, and helped him let go of hate for gays and for black people. He was no longer racist and no longer homophobic, and the books did it. And if that happened, all of them are worth writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of goes back to, like, it was a chance for you to create this character at a time where, we didn't see a lot of characters like this. It was a chance for you, going back to what we were talking about earlier about taking a chance and offending people the proper way. It was more you did it in a way that it brought awareness to the situation, and I guess people started checking it out and enjoying it. So that's going back with a question we had earlier.
Yeah, well, you have to be fearless, and I don't know if I was fearless or just stupid, but I went in and said, this is how it's also how I heard people talk. I was trying to write, at least give the impression of the people I grew up with and how they talked and how they thought and how complex that was. Like, my father was very much a racist, but he treated people the same and went out of his way to help people, black and white. So it was, things aren't that simple. And it's hard to figure those things out. My dad was illiterate. He couldn't read or write, which I think added to the vocalism, the racial vocalism, but he was just a good person. And so he treated people well. So, and I knew people later on that were very liberal minded and spoke all the liberal truths and treated everybody like shit, and wouldn't want to be, wouldn't want to be caught with a black person. They didn't want to be hanging with them. It's okay to talk about it from a theoretical standpoint. And so, somewhere you have people that are always a mixture, some more obvious than others,
Right.
So were there any real life people that you drew inspiration from for Hap and for Leonard that you sort of maybe put these people together to make it happen?
I mean,
Hap's you.
I was an anti-war resistor, and I was supposed to go to prison, and because I refused to go, and they ended up giving me a 1Y after some scary couple of weeks, and which is like not fit for military service. They thought I wouldn't do what they asked if I thought I didn't want to do it, and they were probably right. And you can't have somebody like that in the military. And I'm not anti-military. I was anti that war. I just felt we had 54,000 people killed, and they're like one of our greatest trade partners right now, and people go there for vacation. So it's hard to feel like that anything was achieved. Nothing was. And that saddens me. My brother retired from the military, and I respect a strong military and believe in having a good military, but I don't believe that it's not the military I have a problem with in that respect. It's the people, the politicians that send people to do things that aren't always about, these ideals that they profess. So that was it. Very much like Hap. And Leonard was based on 2 or 3 different people, 2 black people and 1 white person, actually. And then there were other little pieces that drifted into Hap and drifted into Leonard that were not me and not these original 3 people, but other elements,
I don't know if this is your intention or not, but the banter between the two is my favorite aspects of Hap and Leonard. Just their back and forth.
My favorite.
They just talk shit on each other, but in a brotherly, loving kind of way. And I find it hilarious every time.
That banter tells the story more than the narrative does. I love that. I love the fact that the dialogue, I think, between the 2 of them tell the story instead of relying so much on the narrative. You can really get what's going on with the dialogue between the 2 of them. So
very good.
I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah,
I believe that too. I'm glad you noticed that. The one of the things too that I've always been willing to do is there used to be when they would teach you writing to say don't do anything that doesn't advance the plot, especially in what they call genre writing. And I don't agree with that. I think you also have got to go off trail sometimes and have people talk about what they like and what they do and what their experiences are, which gives you a greater understanding of that character, so that when you're reading about them, they're more fulfilling. I've in my life where I grew up, my dad was a great storyteller, and like I say, he's my hero in spite of those racist flaws. I saw what kind of man he was, not what he was saying, which were things that had been handed down to him, like a bad disease or something. But people were storytellers, and storytellers are not always linear. They're not always even literal. It matters. A good stories have an element of folktale to them, have an element of realism to them. They have an element of just pure action narrative, and yet they also have some morality play to them, some sensibility of life and how to approach it. And at my best, I think that I managed to do those things reasonably well. I know that's what I'm trying to do, and I've never lost that sort of Texas tall tale element from it. I think Robert E. Howard had that when he went in and wrote his stories, and he was a Texan, and he was born in an area that was, poor guy shot himself, but had I had to live in Cross Plains, I would have shot myself. It's a bleak place, bleak as it can be, And in fact, if you want to get a good feel for that, there's a movie called The Whole Wide World, which is about Robert E. Howard and about him growing up in Cross Plains. Well, about him being a grown man in Cross Plains. And it's based on He Who Walks Alone by Novelyn Price, who was kind of his peripheral girlfriend, So I always related to him, even though my personality was different.
You're talking about giving these characters like backstories and personalities and stuff. That's how the readers connect with them. Like, this is this character's favorite food, and this person likes to go watch football or whatever it is. Instead, that doesn't advance the plot, but it gets you more invested in these characters. So when something happens to them in the plot, a character dies or something bad happens to them, you're more invested at that point.
Right. And sometimes you have stories within stories. And I've had times when Hap or Leonard and our other characters in other stories would pause to tell you about an event in the past. And yet somehow it relates to the present without having to be an actual cog in the plot wheel. Because I don't plot that well. I'm a storyteller, and I'm a storyteller, I think, that has a certain style and a certain voice. And a really good storyteller has a voice, like Mark Twain. There's a storyteller.
And like I said, like a story within a story, that just adds to the realism of it, because that's how people are in real life. You'll be going to do this one specific goal, but you're going to tell different stories and stuff along the way.
Yeah.
Do you think you have a few more Hap and Leonard stories in you for the future? Are we going to see more from them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you will.
Has it been difficult?
I'm never absolute or definitive about things like that, because I don't always know what I'm going to do. But I feel that I've got, some more Hap and Leonard novels, sure.
Has it been difficult to keep writing about these same characters for however many years, all these different stories?
No, because I don't always write about them all the time. And when I take a years off, like I think I've had 7 and 8 years between them at one point. They don't age. I age, but they stay right where I left them. So I don't try to catch it up with the year that I left them. It's now, but they're still not aged. So they're in their 50s. They're like 50, 51, and I'm 70. And that's not fair, because they started out about the same age. And, they've got, so I do I have trouble with them? No, I've had trouble writing some stories or some novels. They were harder than others, but I'm not someone who suffers as a writer particularly. I mean, I can have aggravations and stuff, but I love doing it. And I get tired of people, trying to talk about how they're crucified every morning to write. Because I did real work, a manual labor, and things of working in the rose fields and aluminum chair factory and a janitor and all that. So just shut up. You've got the life of Riley. You're getting to make stories and get paid for it.
So with your routine now, with you writing every morning, do you think writer's block is real? Is that something you ever suffer from, or do you just think it's
I don't know if it's real, but I don't know that it's real, but it's not real for me so far, and I would have a feeling that it's not going to be real for me. I've never had writer's block. I've had a day where I couldn't get something to work, or I've had a day where I feel like, well, maybe I better take off today. I'm actually going to go to the movies today, or I'm going to go out and do something or another instead of write. But that's rare. And a lot of times I'll find if I just switch over to another story or something that I have in my pile, that I've started, I'll have a good day doing that, and I'll be fine the next day. And sometimes I'll write in the morning on whatever my main project is. And then if I still feel I got energy and I got time, I'll switch over to something else and work on it for a while. but I've never had writer's block. No, and I don't believe in it for me. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying other people might not have it, but I'm not. I think most people have, when they're having a hard time doing something, call it writer's block. And I think a lot of times when they don't write, they call it writer's block, and they're not writing because they're not trying to write.
Yeah.
So with Hap and Leonard, is there something specific about those two characters that keeps drawing you back to want to tell more of their story?
I like them.
Yeah.
They're flawed.
Enough said.
They're really flawed human beings. I mean, they're vigilantes, they're killers, or have been. But I like them because there's an idealism about them, and they are morality plays, meaning that we know that their hearts are good, which in reality, if you people doing that, you wouldn't know really what they were or what they were doing. But from a standpoint of fiction, we know that, and I think that draws me back. And their relationship is the main thing. That's it.
Yeah.
So with that, why don't we move into the Hap and Leonard game we have?
You'll play a game.
Okay.
Let's break it up a little bit.
I probably do terrible at this. I was telling Brad earlier that I've been asked questions before, and I'll tell them, no, that's not right. And then they go, well, you said it right. Well, I did, didn't I? And I also have, there's certain contradictions in the series here and there, minor ones, but they're there.
So again, these are answers that I got off the internet. So the internet might be wrong. So I'm not saying you're right or
you
wrong.
can prove the internet
They
right
might
or wrong.
Prove the internet right or wrong.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna play a little bit of Hap and Leonard trivia here. Hold on, let's see. I got a fancy little video.
I'm glad
Jason.
you fixed the misspelling you had earlier.
Yeah, spelled Leonard wrong earlier.
It was a good catch.
All right, so I've got 10 questions for you. They're not too hard, I don't think. So number one, how old was Hap when we first meet him in Savage Season?
40, 38, 40. I don't know. What's the answer?
40s
Okay,
what
I
Wikipedia
thought
said.
ballpark. Yeah.
All right, question two.
Yeah,
What type
that's
of
about
cookie? Question two. What type of cookie is Leonard's favorite?
Vanilla. Anything vanilla. Vanilla wafers is like his favorite, but he also likes just vanilla cookies, and he switch hits.
He pisses Hap off because he doesn't share the cookies. He eats them all by himself.
No, he doesn't. And people don't notice a lot of times, but Hap likes animal crackers.
Does he? All right, number
But
three.
he's just not as malicious about them. He'll share them, and Leonard will expect him to share them, but he won't share his cookies very easily.
So that's the brother rivalry back and forth of not sharing the cookies and sharing the cookies and stuff. That's just like me and my brother.
And what's the next question?
So number three, how many main novels are in the Hap and how many main novels are in the Hap and Leonard series?
$12.
Are you there? 12? Okay. 12 is right. Can you name the novels in order?
You're not gonna make him do them in order, are you?
I bet he can.
Can
do
you
it.
hear
Can
me?
you name the novel? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. I lost you. 12 novels.
12 novels. Can you name the main novels in order?
Savage Season, Mucho Mojo, Two Bear Mambo, Bad Chili, Rumble Tumble, Captain's Outrageous, Vanilla Ride, Devil Red. That's what I'm doing. Can you not hear me? Have I lost you?
Oh, we got you. I can hear you.
Yeah. Let me start over. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
No.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Maybe
Ready?
he can't hear us. Yeah.
Can you hear us now?
Savage Season, Mucho Mojo,
Okay.
Two Bear Mambo, Bad Chili, Rumble Tumble. Yep. Captain's Outrageous, Vanilla Ride, Devil Red, Honky Tonk Samurai, Rusty Puppy. Jack Rabbit, Smile, and Elephant of Surprise.
Nice. Jay didn't have faith in you. He didn't think you'd be able to do it.
That's a lot.
All right. Number 5. In the novella Cocoa Butternut, What breed of dog is Cocoa Butternut?
Ooh, Dachshund.
Dachshund, yeah. Number 6. In which novel?
Also known as
does
Wiener
the-
Dog, Dachshund.
Wiener
Yeah.
dog.
Wiener dog.
The mummified dog. Number 6. In which novel does the extreme henchman known as Hammerhead appear?
Ooh. Oh. Wow. I don't know.
Captain's Outrageous.
Okay.
All right, number
I
7.
did not know
The
that.
Didn't know that.
We stumped
Stumped
him.
him.
We stumped him.
Number 7. The criminal angel is a female blank. Fill in the blank.
Is a female assassin? Oh, Angel. Oh, she's a bodybuilder.
Female bodybuilder, yeah. All right, number 8. Who initially published the limited edition of Rumble Tumble?
Cemetery Dance?
Subterranean Press.
Ah, okay. Bad dog.
All right. This one's another fill in the blank. Hap and Leonard get mixed up in a revivalist cult that believes Jesus will return flanked by blank.
Well, I couldn't hear it, the last part.
Hap and Leonard get mixed up in a revivalist cult that believes Jesus will return flanked by what?
Flying saucer.
It was an army of lizard men.
An army of lizard men.
An army of lizard men
Oh,
from
yeah, that's right.
from Jack
Yeah,
Rabbit
that's
Smile.
Jack Rabbit Smile. Yeah, see, I didn't remember that. Yeah.
That's such a bizarre thing too. An army of lizard men coming back with Jesus.
Yeah, and I didn't remember that. Yeah.
All right, and the final question, number 10, in the novella Hoodoo Harry, what words are painted in large white letters on the side of the missing bookmobile?
I don't remember.
Look in your book. It's in Born for Trouble. So on the side of the bookmobile, it said
okay.
rolling literature.
Oh, okay. I would have never thought of that. Never remembered that.
So 2 of those stories. So that's all for the questions.
I think he passed still.
I think you passed.
Missed a couple, but I think he passed.
I think you know your own stuff.
Thank God.
Sweating it out a little bit there. Yeah.
Not well enough, obviously.
So 2 of those are Cocoa Butternut and Hoodoo Harry. Those are in the new one, Born for Trouble.
That's right.
And those
that's right.
So all those have been previously released, right? They're novellas: Cocoa Butternut, Hoodoo Harry, Sad Onions, The Briar Patch Boogie, and Cold Cotton.
Right. And there's Sad Onions was in a short story anthology.
So were all those were they all out of print now and you're collecting them into one new collection?
Yes. Yes.
Was it hard to narrow those down and pick those which ones you wanted to put in there, or were those kind of the only ones that were out of print?
Yeah, that was it. They were the only ones that were out of print, and that was pretty much it for that length that hasn't already been collected. You know, I have short stories about the characters that deal with them in their youth that are among my favorite. My favorite Hap and Leonard's are Blood and Lemonade and Of Mice and Minestrone. Yeah.
Yeah. I read
That's
this.
right. And Blood
I guess
and
when it
Lemonade.
came out. I got it too somewhere. There it is. I like how all the covers match up, the black and red, white together from Tachyon.
Right.
So is
And then
Tachyon?
there's
Did they
another
put
one
out?
called Hap and Leonard.
Got it too.
Oh, you do have them. Okay.
I got.
I didn't know you had all those, Brad.
I do. I got them. I guess when they came out with Tachyon. And so is Tachyon? Do they do all the Hap and Leonard stuff? Is that the publisher for Hap and Leonard?
No, they do the Hap and Leonard short pieces, but my publisher's Little Brown Mulholland. They do the novels.
The novels.
And then,
okay.
Also, Knopf Vintage did the original first six. They reprinted them. They didn't do them. They reprinted them. They were originally with Warner, Mysterious Press, and then they moved to Knopf, and now they're in the Vintage Black Lizard line. But the later Hap and Leonards are with Mulholland.
So this is Black Lizard line, right? Vintage crime.
So there's two publishers for the novels and one for the short fiction.
Right.
So you said you like writing the Hap and Leonard when they're younger. Like this collection was awesome of Mice and Minestrone. I really liked getting to know them.
Yeah, I do prefer it.
This was my introduction to Hap and Leonard. So I started, I guess, when they were teenagers starting out.
Yes. And
Do you think
Blood
someone
and
should start?
Lemonade is they're even younger.
Even younger? Okay.
Do you think someone should start from the very beginning if they're going to hop into Hap and Leonard, or do they go in order, or should they just find like a short story collection and go with that first, or what?
They're basically in order of the short stories. They move around a little bit, but they give you an overall view of their younger life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You understand why they are who they are and how they became who they are.
Right.
Do you feel like you write
I am
the
also
characters?
working on a book about Leonard that just has Leonard in it. And I've
Nice.
written 3 or 4 stories. They're all real brief, and I'm going to put them together, I hope, if I have the time and continue to do them and have a collection of stories just about Leonard.
Nice. I like Leonard. I think I like Leonard more than Hap. Leonard cracks me up.
A lot of people do. Yeah.
It's like the origin story. Nice.
So when you write the collections like these two where they are younger, do you feel like you try to write the characters differently, or you write them the same as when they're adults?
Yeah. Well, I feel like we are different when we're younger, but the seeds of who you are always there, and so you try to stay consistent with that. But you can see Hap change. Leonard doesn't change as much in an obvious way, but he changes too after Vietnam, especially. But Hap, you see him change in increments, but yet you always recognize it's him.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite story of Hap and Leonard, either a novel or a short story? Or is it too hard to pick?
That's tough. Yeah, there's one, I think it's called, Blood and Lemonade is one of my very favorites with just Hap. And then that's in Blood and Lemonade, obviously. And then there's another story I think it's called The Night Before. And it's when they're just going fishing. They're just talking. That's the whole thing's just them talking because Leonard's going to go to the military the next day. And Hap's not long off for going to prison. Or no, I take it back. They have there's that, but there's another story, and I can't remember the name where Hap has come out of prison and Leonard has come out of the military, and they meet up to talk, and they never really talk too much directly about the war or about prison, but you know what they're talking about. And it's a purely character-driven story, and I think it's one of my favorites. But I guess Blood and Lemonade is my favorite of the short stories. I like all of the short stories. To me, they're almost like if you put them together, almost like a novel.
Yeah, oh yeah. The one where they just got out of the war and back from prison, that's the watering shed, right? Is that in this one, the watering shed? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
That is the story, but that's not the one I'm talking about. There's one that's in Mice and Minestrone, and I think it's the very last story in the book of Mice and Minestrone.
The Sabine was high. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Sabine was high. That's the one.
This one was cool because you have recipes in here in the back of the book for
Yes.
what they're eating and stuff. Was that just something you wanted to do with this one
Right.
particularly, or what inspired that?
Yeah, it was funny. My daughter did the recipes and she wrote all the thing. It sounds kind of like Hap's voice, but that's Casey. That's one good example of how much our voices are alike, is that we wanted to say what kind of food they ate. And it was certain things were mentioned in the stories, and then those foods were done. And then Casey did kind of a video of her making some of the recipes, which is just funny. It's just adorable because she's not that great a cook, but she's gotten to be. And but in that she's very funny trying to make all that stuff work, and you can still see those online somewhere.
I think they're on Tachyon's website or Tachyon's YouTube page because I watched a few of them. She was making like a chili or something one time.
Yeah.
So are these recipes, are these things that you've eaten before, or are they just solely made up for the stories?
Yes.
Are they?
Yes. No, yeah. They're yeah. I mean, those are legitimate recipes. They're not necessarily all healthy because they come from a different era, but they're the sort of food that Hap and Leonard ate growing up.
The funniest one is Shank's cherry bombs. It's got a warning. It could cause vomiting, dehydration, pregnancy, and death.
And death. Got to put death in there.
And
it's got the Everclear from the moonshine. Just that cracked me up.
Right.
It could cause death.
Yeah.
Or pregnancy.
Yeah. Well, that was Casey. She put all the menus together. All the recipes.
How did the TV series come to be with Hap and Leonard?
The Jim Mickle, who is a director, and Nick D'Amici, who is a actor and a writer, they came to me years ago wanting to do Cold in July, which is not a Hap and Leonard book.
Right.
And I was really impressed with them. And I had seen the first movie they had done. Yep. And I said, okay, we'll do that. And 7 years later, they did it. But before that, for 7 years, me and director John Irvin tried to get it off the ground, and we couldn't. I wrote that screenplay. And eventually, by the time they kept watering the screenplay down, I didn't care, and it didn't get made. Then it went 7 years fallow. Then Jim and Nick came along, and they had it for 7 years. And then finally, they got it made. And then that led to me, having a connection with them. And then Lowell Northrop, who was my co-producer, a co-executive producer on Hap and Leonard, had come to me to go do Savage Season as a movie. And so I wrote a script. Well, that never happened, but it all just sort of coalesced into this one project for Sundance, which became the Hap and Leonard series and went for 3 seasons. And it was their most popular show.
3 seasons, right?
They canceled it anyway. Yeah, they canceled it anyway, even when it was their most popular show.
Yeah. I don't know why networks do that, but yeah.
Yeah, you can see it on Netflix. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Netflix has those 3 seasons though. They're still there.
Did you have much say in the production and casting and all that kind of stuff for the show?
Well, not casting. They showed me the casting more as a courtesy, and I made comments and whatever. I think they kind of know what they want to do and are moving in that direction. And I understand that to a great extent. I had a lot more input in the first season because I was on the set the whole time. The second season I wasn't, and then the third season I was on there briefly. So the first season is still my favorite because I was there a lot, and I made some good friends on the first season. And also Jim was also the story runner, so they changed it. And when they changed and they got a very good showrunner, John Worth, but I didn't have the same connection with him. So he didn't know me, didn't understand me. So I wasn't on the set as much, but and we're good friends now, we got to know each other, but they listened to me. I'll give them that. I always said that they let me say what I wanted to say, and then they got to do what they wanted to do.
Did you have a lot of final say working with Cold in July and BUBBA HO-TEP? Or is it a different situation for you? Or
no, but I just feel they did such a good job. Don Coscarelli, he did his own thing, and I was on the set. My son and I were on the set a lot for that one, but Don had written a script. I'd had the chance to see the script. I had been asked to do a script, which I chose not to do because I was in the Writers Guild, and that it couldn't pay enough for the budget that they had for me to do it. But I loved everybody on it, and that's how Bruce and I became friends, and how I got to at least meet Ossie Davis, which was wonderful. And so I didn't really say anything unless Don asked me. Once in a while, they might ask me something, And Cold in July, I didn't have a whole lot to say there either. I taught Sam Shepard one finger lock technique that he used in the movie. But other than that, if they asked me something, I'd say, and that didn't mean they always did what I suggested, but I felt I was in good hands with them. I can be annoying about stuff like that because I want it done my way, because of course I'm the smart guy, because I invented it. But on the other hand, and I always love it. They always say, well, we're going to work in the spirit of, and I always say that means bend over. You're about to get it, because you might as well bend over, because spirit of can be anything. But they treated me well, and they did more than that. They were very close to the novel and the series, and certainly they did make changes though.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you want to have your hands in it because it's your baby that they're messing with. Your creation, your baby, and you want to have some say in it.
If I'm trying to direct one right now based on a story I wrote that my son adapted, and I hope to direct it, that's called The Projectionist, and that's my plan. And if I can raise $1.2 million, then I'm ready to go. But I really want to do that too. But I understand the difference. I've always hated when people say, they're not the same thing. Of course they're not. And sometimes you cannot adapt something literally, but sometimes you can adapt it a lot closer than they like to let on, because everybody wants to put their finger in the pie so they can say, I'm the one that poked that hole,
Were you pretty satisfied with the outcome then of both of those, BUBBA HO-TEP and
all of them? And also Incident on and Off of Mountain Road, which was done for Masters of Horror, was really good. I thought that Love, Death, and Robots treated me very well in the animation. I was very happy when I wrote for Batman. I thought that they treated me with great respect, and they did my scripts pretty much like I wrote them. But my scripts were also based on ideas and things that they had, constructs that they had. But I've been very, very happy for the most part. I've had a little bit of something here and there I wasn't as happy with, but nearly all film stuff for me, I've been very, very fortunate.
Did you have to change your writing style much for the Batman series? Like step away from what you normally
not really. Write? No, I didn't. I remember there's a there's a collection of those things where Bruce Timm talks about, I think it's Read My Lips, and he was saying that they wish they could show my screenplays, could actually put the screenplay up there. I think I write interesting screenplays. I think I write good screenplays, and sometimes I'll drop a little humor in there that's not going to be in the film, but it's for the reader, or a description in the way I describe something that will make them feel it and see it, but the reader's not going to see that. But I don't ever tell them something that can't be visualized. I just say it in my own way,
I used to
your
love
buddy Chad in the chat here is going on about your name, about the R and your initial there.
Yeah. What's the
Tell
power
us
of the
power
R?
of R.
You're right. You're right. Well, Dean Koontz dropped the R in his though many years ago. He dropped the R. Look where he went. He did just fine.
Let's not forget about Stephen R. King.
Yeah. Do you know about Stephen R. King?
Yeah. He's that other guy. George. We used to call George Railroad Martin. George Railroad Martin. Yeah. Back when we knew him in the 70s, in the 70s and 80s, that was always the joke, which I'm sure he's very tired of hearing, but it's George Railroad Martin.
So I used to love the Batman animated series. Did you work on that a lot, or was it just a couple episodes?
I did 4 episodes. Well, I did 3 for that, and I did 1 for Batman and Robin Adventures, which followed that. And I did 1 Superman, and I did the movie Son of Batman, which is out there on one of the platforms. I love doing it, man. I'd do it right now.
Were you a big comic book fan growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. Comic books are why I'm a writer, and Edgar Rice Burroughs sealed the deal. But it was reading comics when I was 4 years old. I started trying to draw them and write them, and I've done it ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
So usually we don't really ask this, but since you are an influence to a lot of writers now, like Chad Lusky, you're a big influence on him, like the Neon Owl and stuff.
I
Who are
love
some of
him.
your influences? Chad's great. I love Chad.
Well, he's a great writer too. I mean, he's a guy that needs to get more attention. Yeah, and it's not that he hadn't got any; it's just that he needs more. My favorites were, when I was a kid, it was Edgar Rice Burroughs, without a doubt. And some of those stories, of course, you outgrow them in ways, but there was a way he wrote in first person that I really believed those stories, and I tried to carry that over into my first person work, and I tried to carry his momentum. But Raymond Chandler, Ray Bradbury, Harper Lee, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Steinbeck, Carson McCullers, Hammett, Kane. What I'm trying to think, what the other, well, I don't know if I said Flannery O'Connor. I probably did, but she would be one. There, Robert Bloch was a big influence. That whole Matheson, Charles Beaumont bunch, Rod Serling for the TV show, not necessarily for the writing itself. Although he wrote some terrific scripts and screenplays and stuff. So yeah, all of those writers were very important. Fred Brown, good grief, I could go on and on. I think
be a
about
4-hour show.
I get numb thinking about all the writers who have. Philip Jose Farmer and good grief, James Cain is a big influence, as is Raymond Chandler. I said them earlier, but just to reiterate, writers in all kinds of genres.
Aside from Chad, any other ones from today, like some of the indie small press that you check out that you're excited about?
Well, he's outgrown it, but Stephen Graham Jones is like, one of my favorites, and Sean Cosby, is terrific. And he writes this, Cosby, I'm sorry. And there's Andy Rausch, I think that's how you say his name, who I think is more attention. He's written more than I've read, but the couple I've read and some short stories I think are really, really good. So those are some of the new ones that just popped in my mind immediately.
Do you keep track of totally off subject? Do you keep track of all the awards you win?
No, I was telling I realize I've lost some of my Bram Stokers. I've got 4 missing somewhere,
what?
And I don't know where my Edgar is. I'm looking at them now. I don't know where the Edgar is. I don't know where my Herodotus is. I have my Raymond Chandler Lifetime Achievement. I think it's 35 of them, but I could be overstating or understating. I don't know. I care about them, but that's not my life is right. Just for awards. I care about them. I respect them. I love it when I win one, but I never think about, am I going to win? That doesn't even occur to me. Most of the time, I don't even know I'm up for them. One of my favorites, though, the other day is the Texas Institute of Letters. They wrote me, they said, "We want you to know that you're a finalist for this award." Well, I didn't even know I was up for the award. Right. I mean, I knew my book was sent for the award, but I didn't even know that it had got that far. And then it says, "And you're a finalist for this." And then at the bottom it says, "But we've already picked the winner," and so and so. And that just made me laugh out loud. It's like, you're a finalist, but you lost, motherfucker.
It's kind of like just dangling the carrot in front of your face a little bit. It's just like,
yeah. I am currently up for the poetry for the Bram Stoker, up for the poetry collection. So
nice. Is that, you said earlier, that's the first poetry you've done?
Yeah.
Was that like a completely different writing experience than writing prose?
Not as much as I would have thought. No.
Mm-hmm. So you said earlier, well, go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, well, what's in this poetry? Is it like dark stuff about life, or is it like rhyme time?
Yeah, it's funny too. There's humor. There's dark stuff about life. There's some of them. I think a lot of my poems tend to be almost like little flash fiction stories,
Okay.
And then some of them are I don't try to rhyme poetry. I do have a few that rhyme, and they've appeared. Part of them, about half of them, have appeared in other places, beforehand, and were collected. And then the other 50 I wrote in 2 mornings because the book, they wanted to do the book, and I thought, well, hell, I don't have enough poems.
Just knocked them out.
Yeah.
So we'll start to wrap up here. But you said earlier you read a lot. So what are you reading right now?
Blood and Treasure by Tom Clavin and another guy as a partner. I can't remember the other, but it's a nonfiction book about the settling of the frontier with Daniel Boone as the main focus. And it's really, really fascinating and interesting. Before that, I read Ace Atkins' last Spencer novel, Bye Bye Baby. And I'm reading a old comic book collection called Sword of the Atom, which is about the character of the Atom, as Gil Kane was involved with that. Okay. And I just finished something else up. For some reason, I'm not thinking of it right now that I liked pretty well. Oh, I reread Elmore Leonard's City Primeval, High Noon in Detroit City. And I like that one because it's such a banal character that's still dangerous.
I've only read one of his, and then there were none, I think is what it was called. Because I think Tarantino was supposed to adapt that into a movie.
So some of these,
I don't recognize that one. And then there were none by that title. He did do one. Jackie Brown was, I think, was Jackie Brown Rum Punch, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So how often from the stuff you're reading, how often does it usually trigger an ideal in your head for your next book? Do you draw a lot of inspiration from what you're reading?
Yeah, I do. I also draw it from newspapers. I draw it from comments that people say, offhand things. I draw it from nonfiction. Sometimes I draw it from movies or TV shows or old radio shows or comics. It can come from almost anything.
I was watching the trailer for All Hail the Popcorn King, and you had a comment in there that your wife would give you the most unhealthy popcorn, and none of sort of nightmares, so you'd have these weird dreams. Is that actually something that happened? Right. She'd give you that crazy popcorn?
Yeah, and I'd get up the next morning and write those down. I sold every one of them. But my health was important, so I had to back off those. And also, I think that they taught me how to do that. It's sort of like, once I learned how to do that, I could write flash fiction. I could write absurdist stories. I was selling them to Twilight Zone and magazine and other places like that, and anthologies. But I wrote a fistful of more than a fistful of stories from popcorn.
What kind of popcorn
and the
was
novel
this? It was giving you
drive-in comes from popcorn. Yeah.
What kind of popcorn was this that was giving you these crazy dreams?
It's just standard popcorn, but the key was to have the worst lard you could find. It used to be a place at Proctor that they used to sell. I think it's been put on the list that that's probably environmentally unsound. They used to have a thing called Krogo, and Krogo was just damn near lard, and you just slap that lard in the hot grease, and then in goes the popcorn, and it's not good for you. And then we'd eat a big bag of it, and we would overindulge, and the overindulge was what caused the dreams.
You didn't know when to stop.
I could have probably, no, it might have been if I'd eaten cupcakes, it'd have done the same thing if I'd eaten enough.
Right.
She had crazy lard hallucinations that came up with all these great stories.
I think the lard had something to do with it. Yeah. I figured if I wanted to live to be, 40, I might ought to give that up.
Yeah.
So is that where the nickname, the Popcorn King, came from? Was from that popcorn?
Yeah. And it comes from the novel, The Drive-In, because the antagonist is called the Popcorn King, and he's a somewhat alien construct due to lightning. And it's very hard to explain, but the Popcorn King comes from that. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Joe, this has been fun.
Well, your cult books.
This has been fun. It's been a pleasure. We really appreciate the fact that you put some time aside to just talk with these two dopes with microphones here this Friday night. We really hope you come back and really hope you come back in the future. It's been our pleasure. So thank you very much. I mean, you're legendary.
Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for coming by. Brad, you have anything else before we wrap it up here?
Yeah. When does Born for Trouble come out so everybody can go ahead and pre-order that? Is it out now?
It's now.
Nice.
Great.
Yeah.
So it's 5 novellas. Hap
I
and
think
Leonard.
officially it may be at the end of the month, but everybody's showing it, so everybody's getting it. So,
Right.
but by the end
They're
of
getting
the
it
month,
somehow.
for sure.
Yeah,
They
somehow
are,
they're
yeah.
getting it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And so when later on, Brad will have some links down below so people can get in the right direction and order
Thank
it
you.
and get it and all that stuff and all that fun stuff. So that's going to do it, guys. We cannot thank Joe enough for stopping by. It's been another great,
Thank you,
exciting
guys.
episode of Paper Cuts. Thanks to everyone in the chat. And of course, this is going to be shown on Brad's channel and my channel tonight, tomorrow, all weekend, and it's going to be up there forever. And of course, we're going to make a podcast out of it
Forever.
So for those, for those who like audio only, there'll be a podcast of this before the weekend's over. So again, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by. And that's it. It's a wrap. This has been another exciting episode of Paper Cuts. Until we meet again, please stay safe. See ya.
CJ, love
Thank
you.
you guys. Bye.
Brad.